Hi, welcome to the lecture of Chapter 10, Ethical, Legal, and Social Issues. This is of information systems, but probably more pertaining to information systems and employees working on them. So let's get to it. Now, one of the issues we have is, computers are tools, but I wonder how many mistakes and how much waste that we spend playing with them. Example of related waste things could be operating unintegrated information systems. So I have to enter some data into one system, get out and re-enter the data into another system, or I've got to copy the data to a file and upload it into another file. Sometimes having to do the same thing multiple times, having to not know exactly where to look for information, or to have the same information in two different places, but not quite the same. Big waste of time. Now, computer-related mistakes could be errors, could be failures in the computer systems. Just could be that it's old stuff that's just hard to migrate into something new. But most of the mistakes are caused by us, human error. Garbage in, garbage out. We make mistakes. We enter the data wrong. We design the system in poorly. We don't copy all the data as we're populating a new system. A lot of little things like that generate computer waste and makes mistakes. Now, a little bit more detail on computer waste. Unintegrated information systems definitely makes it difficult to collaborate, share information, which of course leads to missed opportunities, missed sales, increased costs, who knows what else. Systems acquire different organization units. When a company buys companies and get other company systems, or merge organization units together, now I've got double the hardware, double the software, big waste. Maybe just improper use, lack of training and people don't use it right. Or they use it for personal versus work-related, personal email, computer games, shopping, you name it, we've all done it. Computer-related mistakes, common causes, basically, we don't have our expectations in alignment. Maybe users aren't trained. We're not listening to the feedback they're giving us. We developed a program that has errors in it. We don't correct the data. So there's several different causes for some of those related mistakes. Now, how do I prevent it? Well, there's basically, we've got to have the right rules and policies, procedures in place to make this happen. But having just having them written doesn't make any help if they're not implemented, if they're not monitored, if not tracked, if they're not reviewed and improved. All of those things come into play. So what do we think about when we're establishing procedures? You got to make sure the training programs are well intact. All the documentation is correct. Make sure that any new applications are going to put into your information system has been approved and been tested and debugged and ready to go before they're rolled out. Make sure all the documentation and descriptions of applications are, it says, to a central office, but you need to make sure they're stored someplace that everybody knows where to get the latest and greatest. You got different examples of how to use, user manuals, websites, integrated general content, specify. Make sure they understand this is the date and time this policy is in effect. Sometimes we're looking at old policies and we just forget to look at the date. So you just got to make sure that we establish them, make sure they're written, make sure they're recorded. But now, just because I implemented a policy does not mean, I've written it, got it on a web page, stored it away, and the question is I just stick it there and I don't do anything with it. I've got to implement. I got to train the staff. I've got to communicate what's important, what's key, what's acceptable. And once I do that, once the system's up and running, I've got to find a way to monitor routine practices, making sure that what I wanted as a manager, as a owner of a company, as a person responsible for this policy, that the work's actually being done, that it's actually being followed, that the rules that we wanted to establish are working. So I want to audit to make sure that certain behaviors are met. So you just got to, pretty much what you measure gets done. Well, I guess that's kind of the tune here is, if I want policies and procedures to be followed, I've got to make sure that they are being followed, and people have to know that somebody's watching, that they are being followed. And then I've got to make sure that any new question, I got to review these policies and procedures, make sure they're still valid. Make sure that if we put together a rule or a policy that doesn't make sense, that we change it, we modify it, we get to a point where, we're willing to make changes or admit that we've made a mistake. Now, what are some of the privacy issues that we have to deal with? Well, privacy deals with the right to be left alone or withdrawn from public view. So the question is, I have a choice of saying what I want to let the public know, what I want other people to know. Well, we all know that data is constantly being collected and stored in each one of us, and it's easy to distribute this information. The question is, who owns it, and what do we do with it? Now, there are definitely several laws on the books as far as related to federal policy laws and the provisions. So I'll let you go through these. But at work, employers use technology and corporate policy to manage productivity. So should an employee be concerned about inappropriate web surfing? Yes, I think so. And organizations monitor employees' email. More than half of the companies actually scrub and review email to make sure that the employees are doing work-related stuff. Most employers have a policy that eliminates expectation that privacy when it comes to when you're using your own company, the company-owned computer and server and mail system. They bought it for work purposes, so you've got really no expectation to privacy in that environment. And the courts have ruled that without reasonable expectation of privacy, there is no Fourth Amendment protection. So, federal law permits employers to monitor emails sent and received by employees. Emails, messages have been erased from hard drives, can be retrieved, and we've seen a lot of that in the news lately. Email among public officials might violate open meeting laws, which means in government you want those meetings to take place in public so the public has a say. But if you get a lot of email exchange, backdoor conversations, that's kind of what that's going. Now, how do you protect your privacy and your employer's property? I mean, don't send personal private emails at work, instant messages at work, select texting apps that receive fairly high security ratings, disable that appear in a pop-up window on a lock screen. Do not open files and click messages that you don't know the people. Not only is that a privacy issue, it's also a security issue, which we've talked about. So don't send sensitive personal information. So there are several things. Now, there are several devices out there that can sense this. RFID tags, we've talked about that this semester. They're pretty much microchips with an antenna. They can be put into anything and everything. So some states have passed legislation prohibiting implantation under the skin. I don't know about that. That kind of gets a little freaky to me, but mobile crowd sensing means that they're acquiring data by sensing through mobile devices. They're data sharing between information healthcare providers. But what about the internet? How much privacy do we have there? Yeah, we're sending, and there are concerns, sending emails, visiting sites, buying products over the internet. Well, definitely there are laws on the books. The Child Online Privacy Protection Act, impacts, websites that cater to children. They're going to have permission from adults, for any child that's under the age of 13. They're definitely, we've all used social network, so just keep an eye on what's being done. Now, as far as libel, publishing intentionally false statement, yeah, that is called libel. If you're starting to tell lies about somebody else, publishing it on websites, sending emails, guess what? You probably can be sued. Now, individuals can post information using anonymous email screens, but you got to be careful what you post. Now, selling information to other companies can be lucrative, but got to make sure it's yours to sell. So when information is stored and used, whose data is it? Who can sell it? Are you the company owner? You could probably sell it. You may be your data, but if it's a company machine, you might not be able to do that. So how do I kind of do this thing? Well, there are filtering softwares that you can purchase. Now, these a lot are for filtering, internet filtering, whether it's for children or your own filtering to make sure that you don't see what you don't want on the internet. And so there are several out there. Corporate privacy. Now, corporations have a right to privacy too, because invasion of privacy can damage their reputation, turn away customers, affect their how much money they make. BB&B recommends, you got to make sure you've got policy, choice, access, security. You got to have the following stuff. Now, what about individually efforts to protect privacy? There are laws to completely protect individual privacy, but many laws take steps to increase their own. Now, to protect your own, find out what is stored about you. You got to make sure you understand what is already out there. Be careful when you share information. Be proactive and protect your privacy. Maybe take some extra care when you're purchasing something from the internet. So be careful who you're buying from and what they're going to do with the information you gave them. In your work environment, use of computer-based information system definitely has changed the workplace, right? We've seen that. But while information systems are increasing in productivity and efficiencies, there are concerns. There's health concerns, occupational stress about, anxiety, loss of control, seated immobility, fibrosis, basically blood clots in the legs and blood. So, repetitive strain. So I'm doing the same thing over and over again, disorder of the muscles and nerves and stuff, carpal tunnel. So there are health concerns, using computer information systems, we making people sit too long. I mean, right now I think I've heard sitting is now this generation smoking. So maybe we need to think about different ways to do this. Now, why are some of these health-related problems? One, you got poorly designed work environment. You don't take breaks and stretch and rest your eyes. You're staring at a computer screen. As I've been staring at mine all day so far today. So, you got work stressors, hazard environments, repetitive motion. Maybe you're in an awkward position as you're doing the work. The ergonomics or the science of designing machines and products to minimize that stress. Maybe you need to look at a different keyboard, new mouse, new chair to make sure that that stuff is coming to play. Here's just some common discomforts and what you can kind of do to get, so if you got red, dry eyes, neck and shoulder pains, numbness, tingling in hands, all of this stuff is, there are things you can take from chairs to screen monitors so just little things you think about. If you're thinking about how you're seated correctly at a keyboard, think about all this stuff when you just sit on a go. But how are your elbows? Are your arms nearly perpendicular to the floor? Your wrists nearly straight? Are they? The height of the keyboard should be above your thighs. The keyboard, is it centered or off-centered? How far is your monitor away? Is it at eye level? The backrest. So there's a lot of things that comes into play as far as health concerns. Then we get into the ethical side of issues of the information systems. It basically is what is right and wrong. IS professionals are faced with a whole little, probably more unique problems than a lot of other jobs, where IS professionals develop a code of ethics of what people do. So what is ethics? Basically, it's ethical, conforming to generally accepted social norms. Morals are personal beliefs, what's right and wrong, and the law is just kind of a set of rules that what we can and can't do. Now, there are a lot of things that go into in making decisions, ethical decisions, and basically the decision-making process. And you see a lot of these before. Not any different. I need to gather information. I need to develop a problem statement. I need to consult, identify options, weigh the options, choose an option, implement, review the results, make modifications. But so those are the same things that we've seen in decision to make systems and stuff. And here's just some key questions if you wonder about from an ethical standpoint in making decisions, types of things you can ask along each of those different steps. Now, the code of ethics, it just states principles and values that a group of people are going to work together on. Mishandling social issues discussed in this together, including waste, mistakes, crime, privacy, health. All of those things are probably stuff that needs to be included in the code of ethics. And then prevention of these problems that go through. Because not everything, because it's legal, doesn't mean it's ethical. It's not the right thing to do. There are some things that are illegal and unethical we shouldn't do. They're unethical and legal, so we probably shouldn't do them. They're ethical and illegal, so you probably want to make sure you stay closer to this upper quadrant here between everything. You want to make sure you're doing everything that's ethical and legal, and to keep everything out of place. So in this chapter, it's kind of a nice summary project. So it's procedures and policies, avoiding waste in computer systems, use of information technology to balance the needs of information collected and how it's being used, little job and equipment, work conditions, and then, of course, ethics. So all of these are things that are a little bit different in the information systems age and need to be considered as you go out into your career. So hopefully this helps you understand the material in this chapter a little bit better, and I look forward to talking to you later. Bye-bye.